Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card uses a bunch of new products actually that I haven't used before. The first is this Tailored Expressions frame set. It's got just a bunch of different frames that cuts the outside and the inside. And I'm going to be using the outer one. It has some score lines in the middle. I'm also using the Stampin' Up! Sleigh Ride Edgelets, this house one right here. And then the star of the video is the Luminarte Silk Glazes. These are paints that are permanent. You can layer them. They come in a bunch of different colors, I think 35 colors. I bought mine in a pack of 6 from Amazon. They have mica in the paint, so they're very shimmery. They're acrylic based. They're not opaque. So the ones I used a few days ago, those paint pens, those are very opaque. These are translucent, so you can still see through them. These jars are 1 ounce each. You can buy them separately. There's a ton of different colors. I know Simon Says Stamp also carries them. I'm going to take a palette knife. I'm going to kind of swirl it around here so you can get a feel for the texture. So it's kind of thick and it picks up more like an acrylic type paint. It is water based, so you can add water and blend with them. You can also use them dry, and then also you can stamp with them. I'm not going to stamp with them in the video today, but I will in a future video. They work on all sorts of materials. Tons of different materials, from paper to fabric to wood to all sorts of things. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and use some watercolor paper because I am going to use some water on my project, and I just want to make sure that I don't get any warping. So I'm going to start off by taking the gold, and I've got a brush here that I'm going to be applying it with. You can see I'm stirring it around. Actually, after I recorded this video, I read that you're supposed to stir the whole thing to make sure that there's no mica settling at the bottom. So I didn't have any problem. I still had a lot of shimmer, but you might want to do that if you get a set. So I'm going to swish it across the bottom quarter of my cardstock here, and this is cut to a size just a tiny bit smaller than the frame from the Tailored Expression set. Now after I'm done with the gold, I'm just going to wipe my brush off with a tissue because I don't want to get any water. You want minimal water when you're applying it dry. So you can have a little bit of water, and you'll see that I'm going to use some water to blend the colors together. But when I'm starting out with a new color, I'm going to get it as dry as I can. So now I'm applying the orange, and orange and gold blend pretty well together. So once I get it all onto my cardstock up to the halfway mark, I'm going to rinse off my brush. And I don't want to use too much water because the color does fade with water because you're just diluting it. So I'm going to take off as much water as I can so my brush is just kind of moist, and I'm going to work it right at the line where these two colors meet. And so I'm going to kind of brush up and down all the way across the line. And I was pretty happy with the way these blended. I think you're only limited by the drying time. So once it dries, you can't really blend it. And these are permanent once you lay them down. And I'm just going to grab a little bit more orange to fill in maybe some of the gaps where the water diluted some of the color. So once I get that all blended, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to put it in the water, and I'm going to clean it off so I don't have any of the orange and it's dry, so that I can start with the next paint color, which is pink. Pink and orange don't really blend very well together, so you have to be pretty careful where those two colors meet because it will become muddy. You can see where I overlap them a little bit, it almost becomes this strange other color. And so what I'm going to do is not overlap them too much, and I'll go back in and add a little bit more water than what I used between the orange and the gold. So I'm adding some water to my brush here, and you'll see I don't add very much at first, and then I decide a little bit more, and so you can see when I add the water that it does definitely fade the colors. But that's okay because you can layer them, so I can always add more. So I'm going to add a little bit more pink and just kind of go back and forth until I'm happy with the blend. The next color that I'm using, purple, blends great with pink, so we're not going to have any issues there. But even so, I think they blended out pretty nicely. So now finally I'm going to add the purple to the top quarter. And same technique, going back and forth. You can see it's pretty thick when you lay it on, so you can see streak marks. So that's why I'm going all the way back and forth across the cardstock to even it out before I'm finished. And then I'll grab a little bit of water, put it on my brush, and just kind of blend those two colors together. My favorite thing about these paints is the color. The color is just incredibly vibrant. In fact, when I showed the card to my girls, they literally just went, "Oh, Oh my gosh, the colors, because it's so bright and you can see it across my craft room from a distance. It's that bright and beautiful. So anyway, I was really happy with this. I think you can make some really pretty Christmas cards with these colors. So I'm going to lift it up here so you can see. It's very, very shimmery and very vibrant. Alright, now it's time to work on the rest of the card. So I'm going to take my outside frame and some black Stampin' Up! Cardstock and another piece to cut the slope of the home. So I'm going to run that through my Big Shot. And I wasn't happy my Stampin' Up! Edgelet was just, the cardstock was sticking in there. You can see the chimney smoke was ripping off every time I tried to get it out of the die. So I took a dryer sheet and I ran it through my Big Shot with the die, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut it again to see what happens. So after you run it through the die sheet, it becomes very slippery, and so when I pulled it off the cardstock, it literally just fell right off, so I didn't have any problems. It did leave a little tiny bit of a waxy sort of film on parts of the black cardstock, but I don't think it was that bad. I'm going to apply some Tombow Mono Multi Glue to my frame, and then I'll lay it right where I want my hill to be, sort of angled just a little bit, and then I'm going to take a scissor and I'll trim out the edges. I do tend to trim out a lot of things by hand with my scissor because I just use my big Stampin' Up! Craft scissors and I just guide it along the edge of what I'm cutting. So then I'm just going to cut the bottom. You could run it through the trimmer if you wanted to. And then next I'm going to work on the sentiment. And I'm using this sentiment from the Hero Arts Holiday Saying set. And I don't think you could buy it anymore. I've searched everywhere for it. So just find a sentiment that's kind of smallish for the corner. And I'm going to heat emboss it with some white powder. And I'm doing this because I want some white to kind of balance the white frame that I'm going to have around my black frame. And so I'm going to put it in the corner, so I'm going to use a two-way glue pen, and then I'll lay it right there so I have something kind of sticking out of the lower left-hand corner of the frame, and now I have my sentiment sticking out from the upper right corner of the frame, so it kind of balances the design. Now I want this frame to pop up from my glazed panel, so I use Scotch foam tape. I use it quite often, and this time, because it's thick, it's a 1/2 inch thick and I need 1/4 of an inch, I'm just going to take my scissor and cut it right up the middle, and I do this a lot. It cuts pretty easily. So I'm going to line all sides of this frame, and then I'll take my release backing off and I'll put it on top of my glazed panel. And remember, I cut that panel, I can't remember the size of it, just a tad bit smaller than my frame because I didn't want you to be able to see it from the outside. So it just kind of hides it a little bit more when you cut it just a little bit smaller. So you can see it's just a little smaller. And once I get that secured, then I'm going to flip this over and I'll put some ATG tape runner on the back. And then I'm going to mat it to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch folded piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock. And I folded it opening up on the left-hand side just for something different. So anyway, that's the card for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.